Hello? Okay, hello everyone. So good afternoon and good morning to our participants and attendees. Coming from the different parts of the world. So we actually have international viewers also who are joining us today. By the way, I am Archie Tulin of NTFP-EP Philippines, and I am your host for today. I would like to welcome to our today's webinar entitled Wild Foods Foraging, Linking Indigenous Forest Conservation Practices and Wild Foods in Misamis Oriental. So this webinar is co-organized for the Terra Madre Slow Food Festival by NTFP-EP Philippines together with Bukidnon State University, College of Technologies, and by Sivulig Languyo or MAMACILA Higaunon Tribal Community in Claveria, in Hingoog, Misamis Oriental. So we are live here in Zoom, but for those who wasn't able to register and can connect due to difficulties in signal and internet connectivity, you can still support this online event because we are actually live streamed on Facebook, through our Facebook page, Not by Timber Alone, and the Facebook pages of our partners, including Custom Made Crafts Center and Lindungawan Showroom and Cafe. Okay, so to formally start and to give us an opening remark and background of our today's webinar and the Terra Madre Slow Food Movement, let us welcome Ms. Genevieve Laban, NTFP-EP Philippines Area Coordinator for Mindanao.
Hello. Hello, everyone. You have heard it right from Archie that today's webinar is part of the Slow Food Movement. I am sure you would agree with me that our times nowadays is synonymous to fast culture, that is fast information, fast fashion, fast connection, and of course, fast food. Fast information is made possible through the internet, and fast fashion is the use of machines and synthetic raw materials to mass produce textiles. Fast connection or fast connectivity is everybody's interest. Like how fast is your internet connection? How fast is your download speed? And of course, we have everybody's favorite, the fast food. We have burgers, we have fries, soda, junk foods, among others. Today, we will be showcasing 2 videos about a Higaunon community in Misamis Oriental promoting their cinnamon harvesting culture and promoting the conservation of the ancestral forest where these cinnamon trees abound. The second video shows MAMACILA Enterprise using their local cinnamon resource. We think that this is a case of slow food culture, as this Higaunon community strives to establish a community enterprise that prevents the disappearance of their cinnamon harvesting and conservation practice. It counteracts the notion that cinnamon powder can be had from the air-conditioned grocery stores only with the famous McCormick brand that goes with it. The story of MAMACILA Higaunon community combats people's dwindling interest in the food that they eat. The young Higaunon generation are no longer interested in the cinnamon tea that their forefathers drink. Same is true with the mainstream Filipinos. As long as it tastes like cinnamon, they don't care where it is sourced from. They don't care whether it is from Sri Lanka or Indonesia. Most Filipinos didn't even know that we have our own endemic species of cinnamon, the Cinnamomum mindanaoense or Mindanao cinnamon, a cinnamon species found only here in the island of Mindanao. The island where Archie, me, and the featured Higaunon community are based right now. Today's sharing, discourses, and exchange will be all about slow food, highlighting cinnamon resource. The objectives of this webinar are as follows. First, to promote Indigenous forest conservation practices, Indigenous Community Conserved Areas, or ICCA, and Panlaoy. Through this webinar, we will be able to show to the audience that this is not just all about the cinnamon harvesting tradition, but also the overall Higaunon forest conservation practices that continues to nurture the forest, which already includes the cinnamon resource that I was talking about. Panlaoy, by the way, is the traditional forest monitoring activity of the Higaunon involving the elders, women, and the youth. And then secondly, to promote wild foods and sustainable livelihoods. And lastly, to recognize women and youth action on forest conservation and sustainable livelihoods. As you will know from the video that we will be showing, women and the youth are actively involved in the cinnamon enterprise of MAMACILA. I think that's about it for today's webinar. Over to you, Archie.
Yes, thank you, Miss Jen, for that concise backgrounder. So we would like to welcome again our participants now, who we have here today attending through Zoom and through our Facebook Live. But before anything else, I would like to remind participants, especially participating right now here in Zoom, to rename yourself. So first, put your organization first, the one you're representing, and then your name, so that we can track your participation later. Okay, so before we start, we actually would like also to acknowledge our participants. So we have attendees, of course, coming from our co-organizer, the students and faculty of the College of Technologies of Bukidnon State University. We also have, of course, the Higaunon youth leaders from MAMACILA who are connecting with us from Claveria Iningo of Misamis Oriental. We also have participants, I think, from the University of the Philippines and other institutions supporting groups, CSOs, and NGOs. Okay, so welcome everyone to our webinar. First, we are joined in today by 4 of MAMACILA's key community leaders, representing community elder, women, and youth as our community panelists. So aside from our community panelists, we are also grateful for the presence of our reactors who we have invited and who have confirmed their attendance in this afternoon's webinar to give us their views, reactions, and insights from MAMACILA's video presentation. And maybe from this, or maybe through this webinar, we can explore potential collaboration and ways forward to promote indigenous forest conservation and wild foods. So without further ado, let's start. This webinar was actually conceived in line with MAMACILA's current initiatives at the grassroots. So we will be viewing two short films which were actually crafted and produced, co-created by MAMACILA youth with technical assistance from Bukidnon State University. So may I ask Ms. Maya to share the screen? The first of these two videos, entitled Yutang Kabilin og Kinaiyahan, or Ancestral Domain in the Environment, Reflections from Indigenous Forest Conservation Practices, and Misamis Oriental, highlights the significance for the continued protection and conservation of MAMACILA's Indigenous Community Conserved Areas, or ICCA, which is traditionally called Pina in their community. In this short film, we will be hearing from Dato Mantundaan Perfecto Asel Pinuhan and Enrique Limbatao Palu Jr., who are virtually joining us this afternoon from Claveria as our panelists. So to briefly introduce the first two of our panelists, so Dato Mantundaan Perfecto Asel Pinuhan, he is a Higaunon elder from Madre, Claveria, Misamis Oriental. He is one of the key figure in their community in ensuring the recognition of their IP rights and the continued conservation and protection of their ancestral domain. Being a Higaunon traditional elder, he has been providing guidance not just to their community in Barangay Mati, but to the 4 adjoining territories, which forms their Indigenous Peoples Federation, the MAMACILA Higaunon Tribal Community. Our second panelist is Enrique Palu Jr. Enrique is a Higaunon youth volunteer or youth leader from Hingoog, Misamis Oriental. For the past 4 years, he has been actively volunteering for the Indigenous Peoples Federation in ensuring the implementation of their community programs on forest restoration, biodiversity conservation, and community enterprise development. So he is currently pursuing his undergraduate degree in agriculture and biosystems engineering at the University of Science and Technology of Southern Philippines in Claveria. So with this, let us watch this first short film produced by MAMACILA Youth entitled Yutang Kabilin og Kinaiyahan. Miss Maya.
Kami sa Matiman Ibay, Sibulig, Langguyod, MAMACILA Higaunon Tribal Community, usa ka federasyon sa 4 ka komunidad sa mga Higaunon sulod sa Claveria ug Hingoog, Misamis Oriental. Among yutang kabilin naglangkob sa kapin 17,000 ka hektarya nga kayutaan ug lapad nga bahin ini naglangkob sa amo ang kalasangan. Ang kultura ug tradisyon namong Higaunon nakadepende sa amo ang kalasangan. Kung wala ang kalasangan, wala usab kaming mga Higaunon. Busa dako ang among ginahatag nga pagtagad ug pagprotekta ug pag-amping sa among yutang kabilin. Tungod niini, ang mga bukid sulod sa among yutang kabilin sama sa Manggabon, Kalanawan ug Sumagaya giampingan sa amo ang mga katigulangan sukad pa sa mga katuigan nga dili na mahinumduman. Kay kini maoy tinubdan sa katubigan, tradisyonal nga kuhaanan sa mga tambal ug pagkaon, pinuy-anan sa nagkalain-laing kinabuhi ug hilabi na sa tanan isip amo ang sagrado nga lugar ug ampuanan nga mao ang among ginatawag nga Pina.
Sa kanakana sayran no Pina sa buhayan na lugar sa simbahan ng mga ginapuan manginasan. Ko amin baylan yanin dapit ha ampuanan ng mga tribo. Tinuod sa naha doon ng mga atawa sa nakaugsak doon tayana mga kayuda, mga lumot daw, mga sagbot at siwayda sa sagbot doon naghano. Pero siya na mga sagbot doon tayo sa buhayan na mga bulong. Wala lang katun iyo duma ataw pero pinaka-importante yan. Ang puanan na yung dapita ko amin tagdalo sa una panahon din ita alog harig kaulian doon tayo igpay naon para maulian. uh, ampuanan doon sa mga tambal dapitayan sa Pinahabugta.
Para sa ako isip kabataan, importante kaayo nga mapasa sa mga katigulangan ang ilahang kahibalo pinaagi sa kultura ngadto sa kanamo nga mga kabataan tungod kay mao kini ang pinaka nindot nga pamaagi nga mabalansi ang paggamit sa mga butang diha sa kinayahan aron mabuhi ang tao. No, dili lang sa amo nga tribo kundi apil na usab ang mga dili tribo.
Isip usa ka batanon nga higaunon daw kay kahimmuan ang Pina o bahaw-bahaw nga amuhang mahibal-an para pod mapasa namo sa uban pa nga sumusunod nganong naay bahaw-bahaw unsay kalahian sa bahaw-bahaw ug sa Pina para po dili malapasan kung asa to dapit ang sagrado nga lugar. Protektahan ang Pina o ilabi na usab ang bahaw-bahaw para sa mga sumusunod nga mga henerasyon.
Grabe ka mahinungdanon ang among pagpanlaoy kay diha na mo makatunan ang unsa ka mahinungdanon ang among yutang kabilin ug ang kultura kabahin sa among pag-amping sa amo ang kinaiyahan.
Nakasamtangan ang among mga katigulangan nagtinguha nga mapadayon ang pag-amping sa yutang kabilin pinaagi sa pagtudlo sa kultura ug tradisyon sa among mga kabataan.
So thank you again to the MAMACILA youth who have painstakingly produced that video. No, they are actually involved in the whole process of that video documentation, from script writing, storyline production, to video editing, together with technical assistance from Bukidnon University. So before we proceed to our next session or the video showing, may I ask Enrique, can you turn on your camera? Yan. So Enrique and Dato Perfecto are actually connecting with us in Claveria, Misamis Oriental. So Dato Perfecto, pwede ka makadugang og ano Dato? Pwede ka makadugang og base na ka ikadugang storya kabayan sa inyong Pina og bahaw-bahaw. So may I ask Dato Perfecto, maybe he has additional words regarding their indigenous forest conservation practices, which they are implementing in their ancestral domain. Dato?
Wala naman siguro akong makadugang kay naa naman diya tanan, pero ang makadugang ko lang diha ang kining Pina munang giingon sa binag-o karon nga bukid sa Kamingawan. Bukid sa Kamingawan kay wa na kay madunggan di ang mga mananap, pero mo sad na ang nasayra namo sa bag-o karon nga panahon di sulod sa Biblia nga moy ampuanan sa ang among mga katigulangan diha gid magampu kay importante kay ng dapita. Muna akong makadugang ug ang dinhi sa ubos kanang bahaw-bahaw pinaka-importante siya na kay aron dili mahurot ang mga mananap nga kini makaon namo pre sa usa, baboy ug mga uban pang mananap dinhi sa bahaw-bahaw dana na butang ang diha kinahanglan gid nga ampingan kay mahimo og mga ignorante nga among mga kabataan na unsa ning mga langgam dinhi sa among dapit kun pasagdan namo na siya na ang tinuod ana mga pagkaon lang na siya, pero na ay mga tambal gihapon ana kini unggoy na ay tambal paunggoy-unggoy ra na sila, pero mga tambal gihapon ang uban kabahin sa ilang lawas ana. Basta kinahanglan nga ampingan na namo kay aron nga ang kabataan makabalusad sila nga dili sayang ang pag-amping danang bukira. Ampingan namo kay diha ang tinugdan sa tubig bisan asa dapita paingon din mudagay din sa baybay nga mo'y panginabuhian sa tanan katawhan ampingan sad namo kay aron dili limtan sa mga kabataan namo unsa na ang namuyo diha nga angay ay muslan mahimong tambal ang uban.
Okay, madako lang salamat dato. So,
Mm.
thank you for emphasizing how really significant is your forest conservation practices, no? So dato mentioned just also emphasize that their indigenous community in Mamacila, being Higaunon, they're actually still rooted in their forest conservation practices in their forest. So he just mentioned that they have two zones, traditional zones being implemented in their ancestral domain. So they have the Pina, which is their sacred ground. No, this is the place where they do worship, and the Bahaw, which serves as their sanctuary. No, where they do harvesting of selected non-timber forest products. He also highlighted how integral it is to ensure that their traditional practice is being transmitted to the youth. No, as sense of being a community. No, so thank you, Dato, for that wonderful addition, so that we can learn more about your conservation practices. So I know that you want to hear more stories from our panelists, specifically from Dato Perfecto and Enrique. But in the interest of time, for those who have questions, I think there's already participants who are raising their hands. So maybe you can park those questions. No, for those who have questions, you may want to type your questions at the Q&A button located at the lower part of your screen. So you may type your question there instead of using the chat box. And later, our panelists will try to answer those questions during our open forum. Just a reminder, so in typing your question, so maybe it's good to include your name in the sector or organization you are representing. And also, who do you like to answer these questions? So we will try to answer those questions during the open forum later. Okay, so I will call on Gabby. So we have like an icebreaker. Gabby.
Thanks, Archie. So we want to hear what you think. As Archie said, many have already typed in their questions in the Q&A box, no? But we set up this link called Mentimeter, where you can tell us your thoughts about the film, and then we'll try to see what everyone has shared. So if you can go to menti.com on your browsers and type in the code 82962701, or you can click the link in the chat. Wait, let me share the link now. Okay, so I have typed the link in the chat. If you can click that link, you'll be brought to a page where you can enter your key takeaway from the film that we just watched. So from Yutang Kabilin o Kinaiyahan. So I hope I can show. Let me share my screen. So if everyone has started typing, you'll be able to see a window like this, but there will be a box where you can type your own reflections or insights from the film, and hopefully we can all see what everyone else thinks. Is anyone? Okay, let me refresh. So we're really happy and thankful for the MAMACILA youth for helping us documenting their practices and sharing this with us. And as was mentioned in the film, no, it is not only those who are near the forest who benefit from the services that forests provide, but also people in the downstream communities who benefit from a healthy forest. So people have already started typing in their thoughts. I hope everyone can see. Okay, so somebody said, big salute to the Higaunon IPs. And let us all continue to preserve our indigenous forests. And one is a challenge to everyone. We should all be part of conservation, just like MAMACILA. So as active as the Higaunon youth are, we should be as active, no? And We've also seen from the film that it is so important to pass on indigenous conservation practices to the next generation. Ayan. So somebody has said na they're really touched by how they have the heart to eagerly preserve their forests. Wow, okay. Thank you so much. Somebody has shared about how cultural preservation is important, not just for conserving the forest, but for communities as well who rely on forests. Okay, so somebody is pleasantly surprised that there are ancestral domains left in the Philippines. Um, and we salute the MAMACILA Higauonons again for being our forest defenders. And again, conservation and preservation should be encouraged and practiced by everyone. So I think that's it for now. We'll have more time for questions and answers later in the open forum. So back to you, Archie.
Thank you, Gabby. So thank you to all our participants who have given us their feedback. Okay, so I guess we're for the second video. So for the second short film, this is actually entitled okay. So this second short film is actually entitled Pagpangalasan, no? Wild Foods and Sustainable Livelihoods. So in this video, Mama Sila will be sharing the importance of wild foods to their culture as Higaunon, and they will be showcasing a glimpse of their community-based forest enterprise on the locally available cinnamon. No? This short video is still produced by Mama Sila Youth. So in this video, we will be hearing from Bai Gina Limbatao Javier and Michelle Jane Pinuhan, who are also virtually joining us this afternoon from Claveria as two of our panelists. So for their introduction, Bai Dina Gina Limbatao Javier is a Higaunon female leader from Hingoog, Misamis Oriental. She is a mother of three. Now, over the past decade, she has been actively involved in ensuring the recognition of IP rights within their ancestral domain. So Bai Gina is the president of Sibulig Higaunon Tribal Council, their community organization in Barangay Lunutan, Hingoog City, and also sits as member of the board of directors of their Indigenous Peoples Federation, the MAMACILA Higaunon Tribal Community, which exercises jurisdiction over their unified certificate title within the municipalities of Claveria and Hingoog. Since 2016, she has been entrusted by their community to sit as Indigenous Peoples Mandatory Representative or IPMR of the Barangay Local Government Unit in Lunutan, Hingoog City. So our fourth community panelist is Michelle Jane Mendoza Pinuhan. So MJ or Michelle Jane is a Higaunon youth volunteer from Madre, Claveria. For the past 7 years, she has been actively involved in their Indigenous Peoples Federation, like Enrique, the implementation of their community programs on forest restoration, biodiversity conservation, and community enterprise development. So Michelle Jane is currently taking her undergraduate degree in agriculture with major in entrepreneurship at the University of Science and Technology of Southern Philippines in Claveria. So with this, let us welcome Baidina and Michelle Jane and watch the second short film produced by them. MJ? Okay, later. Miss Maya, can you share the video?
Sounds, please. Sounds, please.
Hello. It seems that we are having technical difficulty. We are trying to fix it. Okay. We'll play the video again. Our apologies for the technical error. Okay.
Ang kalasangan dakoy kalambigitan sa amo ang mga lumad nga higaunon. Tungod kay naa dinhi ang among simbahan, butika ug adunay nagpuyo nga nagkalain-laing kinabuhi. Mausap kini ang tinubdan sa ubang katubigan ug among kuhaanan sa mga pagkaon.
Para sa among mga higaunon, grabe ka mahinungdanon ang mga lumadon nga pagkaon tungod kay diha nabuhi ang tanan nga mga higaunon sa ato ang kalasangan. Ang atong mga pagkaon nasulod diha. Daghan pa kaayo nga mga klase-klase diha sa atong kalasangan. Pareha sa mga baboy halas, nga milo, mga ambaw, mga usa. So diha gyud nato makita nga unsa ka importante ug kahalangdon kanato para sa ato ang mga pagkaon sa atong lasang. Muna nga pinaka-importante nga atong protektahan aron naa sila diha magpabilin aron sad nga dili sad tamawadan sa atong mga pagkaon para sa mga sumusunod nga mga henerasyon naapod ilang magamit nga mga pagkaon kung magkainon sa man diha sulod sa ato ang kalasangan.
Importante kini ang wild foods tungod kay diha namo nakuha ang among tambal ug pagkaon. Importante sad kayo kay diha pod ang mga pagkaon diha pod gikuan sa among mga ninuno paggamit sa pagritual.
Sulod sa kalasangan, adunay nagkalain-laing matang sa mga pagkaon ug mananap. Anan og tambal. Usa niini mao ang kahoy nga kalingang.
Ang kalingag usa ka klase sa among lumadong kahoy nga makita sulod sa among ancestral domain. Isip higaunon na diskubrihan sa among mga apuhan o mga katigulangan nga usa kini sa tradisyonal nga tambal sa bunghat, panunghot o pwede usab kini gamiton sa pangpagana sa pagkaon. Ug tungod niini, pipila sa among mga membro ang ga-harvest pinaagi sa pagtapya sa iyang panit uban ang pagsunod sa sistema sa pagharvest aron siguro nga dili kini mapasipalahan ug magmaluntaron ang iyang kinabuhi. Lakbit gamay sa proseso gikan sa na-harvest nga panit kini pagadalhon ngadto sa processing center. Kuskuson sa pino kaayo aron nga isagol sa among pan nga gihimo. Diha sa among nahibaluan nga iyang tradisyonal nga gamit, hinahinay namo nga nakatunan og nakita nga dako kayo kinig potensyal sa among katilingban kay pwede day kini magamit pangsagol sa pagkaon. Busa among nadesisyonan og nauyunan sa among katilingban sa MAMACILA nga maghimo kami og enterprise nga gamit ang panit sa kalingag isip kapanginabuhian sa among mga membro nga ang kadaghanan nini nga nalambigit mao man ang kababayenan. Ang Cinnamon Enterprise dako kay ikatabang sa among mga ginsakupan diha sa ilang pang-adlaw-adlaw nga pagkinabuhi. kay sayod kaming kung wala ang tabang o ang mga tabang sa mga national mga gobyerno o sa non-government organization, ang Cinnamon Enterprise dili gid siya mamahimong magmalaho tayo. Ug samtang gasugod pa lang kami sa among kapanginabuhian, kami nagalaong magmalahotayon kini ug mamahimong dalan sa among kalambuan.
Mga likos, mga tiyaw, malumaba ko kamuyon, sa tagunin mga amorora ko, iman mga so, malitag mga likos, mga...
Okay. So once again, thank you MAMACILA Youth for producing that video, and for the MAMACILA Council of Elders and other community leaders, especially were the ones engaged in their community-based enterprise. So for her additional notes or message, let's call on Bae Gina. Bae Gina, ka makahatag og gamay nga dugang.
Sige, sir. Ate, maihatag ba? Ang ako lang ikadugang nga mga pagpahinumdum na lang ni sa mga sumusunod. So gikan pa sa muhang mga kaapu-apuhan hangtod sa mong mga ginikanan ug hangtod sa kanamo karon nga nagpabilin nga buhong o pabilin nga buhong o pabilin nga buhong o kahalangdon o pag-amping diha sa sulod sa among kinaiyahan kay naatanan ang mga pagkaon o labi na sad ang mga nagpuyo pod nga mga nagkalain-lain pod diha nga mga mananap o mauna nga amo ang giampingan nagpabilin sukad kaniadto hangtod karon nagpabilin nga labing kahalangdon sa amo para sa amo sa mga tribo o nagpasalamat mi nga naapay nagatabang kanamo nga mga nagkalain-lain pod nga mga partner o manghinaot unta mi nga magpabilin nga suportaran mi aron sad sa amo ang mga sumusunod sad sa ilaha pod nga magpabilin pod nga ilang masunod nga labing mahalangdon pod diha sa amo ang yutang kabilin nga among kalasangan.
Thank you, Bae Gina, for that brief but very concise message. Bae Gina just reminded us that it is like Dato Perfecto said. There's really emphasis within this community. There's really emphasis on the involvement of youth, the younger generation, and whatever they're doing, may it be relating to forest conservation or sustainable livelihoods, or that could not be necessarily separated. We could see it at that they're linked between them. So she also highlighted that even with the changing times, with the influence of the mainstream society, they are still practicing what their ancestors taught them, especially concerning or especially still depending on wild foods, even with the availability of many different foods that are not indigenous to them. There's still, what she said, there's still dependence on them, on wild foods, especially for their medicine. So she's also grateful. She expresses her gratefulness for the many partners within their community, which are helping them in their community initiatives, such as on their conservation practices and on their sustainable livelihoods. So thank you, Bae Gina. So we will call you again. Tawagon lang muna mo later para sa open forum. So we'll hear again, by the way, we would like again to invite participants, if you have questions for community panelists, you can type your questions at the Q&A button located at the lower part of your screen. Our panelists will try to answer your questions during our later. No. Once again, I would like to express our gratitude to the MAMACILA youth who have painstakingly produced these two beautifully crafted short videos. So even though they are brief, they contain a lot of relevant messages which our viewers could learn from. Okay, I think now we are ready. No, we have actually invited three reactors for today, no, from different government agencies and the academe. So we will be listening to them. But first, let me introduce them. No? So we have Miss Lorraine C. Brillantes. Mr. Can you turn your camera po, Miss Lorraine? Mr. Weljan P. Kagalawan and Miss Ruby E. Peralta. So let me introduce them first, and I will ask each of them to give us a brief reaction from the videos or from for this webinar for MAMACILA. So our first reactor is Miss Lorraine C. Brillantes. So she is a Senior Trade and Industry Development Specialist from the Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI, in Misamis Oriental Provincial Office. She is currently designated as Industry Cluster Coordinator for Processed Food and as Coordinator for Shared Service Facility Project of DTI and Misamis Oriental. She was born and raised in Cagayan de Oro. She took her undergraduate degree in Information Technology from Xavier University in 2003 and currently studying public management at the University of the Philippines Open University. So that's our first reactor, Miss Lorraine Brillantes. Our second reactor is Mr. Weljan P. Kagalawan. So Mr. Weljan is a forest technician and currently designated as Production and Forest Monitoring Unit Chief and National Greening Program Coordinator at the Department of Environment and Natural Resources Office, or DNR, particularly in the Community Environment and Natural Resources Office, or CENRO, in Initaw, Misamis Oriental, which exercises jurisdiction over Claveria. He took his undergraduate degree in agroforestry at the University of Science and Technology of Southern Philippines in Claveria. So welcome, Mr. Weljan Kagalawan. And our last reactor, no, is Miss Ruby E. Peralta. So Miss Ruby is actually a food technologist. No, she is a food technology instructor at Bukidnon State University. Before engaging with the academe, she worked for some years with the indigenous communities and farmers organizations, assisting them in their community-based enterprises. She had also worked in the food industry, doing research and development. With these work experiences, she encourages her students to apply their knowledge and skills in actual situations beyond the classroom, while helping the micro, small, medium, and community-based enterprises make a step forward. Knowing the real scenarios in the communities, she aims to link the academe with the different communities, extending its expertise and knowledge acquired to improve their lives and to be in touch with the real situations. She loves to develop new products, especially utilizing local resources, and passionate about creating meaningful collaborations among the different agencies and stakeholders, all for sustainable development. So let's welcome Ms. Ruby Peralta. But first, let's hear our first reactor, Ms. Lorraine C. Brillantes. Hi, Ms. Lorraine.
Hello, Sir Archie. Thank you so much for the very nice introduction. Is my audio okay?
Yes, okay po. We can hear you, Ms. Lorraine.
Yes. Okay, just a brief reaction lang. First and foremost, before anything else, congratulations to the Non-Timber Forest Product Exchange Program and to Bukidnon State University and MAMACILA for successfully holding this webinar, Wild Food Foraging, linking indigenous forest conservation and wild foods in Misamis Oriental. So I'm very proud of our Higaunon in Claveria and the enterprise that they're having. Uh, this cinnamon foraging. To be honest, when I received your invitation when it was forwarded to me, I immediately looked up in the internet what are wild foods and what's the significance of wild foods in our to the market, to the economy. And this webinar has caused me to learn about what wild foods are and the importance of forest conservation in relation to sustainable livelihoods, because we at the Department of Trade and Industry, our trust is really on livelihood for economic development. So we are looking into economic sustainability. So when I heard about wild foods foraging, personally, I was thinking that could it be sustainable? Because there might be limitations when you are foraging for wild foods. But after having seen the video, I was very impressed with the Higaonons, that they were so disciplined and they are very responsible in um, harvesting and foraging for wild foods, even thinking about other people who are also relying on our natural resources. And even the youth are also, they also have forest conservation values already. And I'm impressed and I'm very encouraged about um, these groups. And because of this, I know that this undertaking of theirs will be sustainable, and especially their livelihood. I commend our Higaonon brothers and sisters in Claveria, and also the institutions, the non-timber forest, the Bukidnon State University, and the MAMACILA behind them, and how disciplined and responsible they are. And admittedly, there is so much that we can learn from our Higaonon brothers and sisters. And um, that is why I applaud the efforts of non-timber forest products exchange program for their trust also in forest preservation, because as I have seen in the video, the forest is really a sacred thing to them. It upholds their way of life, their culture, and the tradition of our IP communities. Its preservation is really life to them. And um, because of this, the efforts of the non-timber forest product exchange is really laudable. And I'm also very encouraged about the product, the cinnamon product that they have. It is an exciting product with much market potential, especially that we can consider this as a wild food. And wild food nowadays in the market is very sought after. And I also learned right now that it has medicinal value. So there is much potential to this if we are going to package this, and if we are going to market this properly. I'm sure that it will go a long way, and we can even market it in the export market. So um, keep it up. Let's continue to support this project. We at the Department of Trade and Industry would surely support this program of enterprise of the Mamacila and the Higaonon brothers and sisters in Claveria. Thank you very much for making us a part of this activity.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Lorraine, for that wonderful message of yours. No, it is really true that there are actually a lot to learn, no, from our indigenous communities, partner indigenous communities. We are particularly interested, Miss Lorraine, on what you've shared regarding the marketing potential of cinnamon, no, which the Mamacila, this is their sort of a banner product. So maybe we are really interested, and Mamacila, I think, is really interested to further collaborate with DTI in exploring market linkage uh, for cinnamon. Thank you, Ms. Lorraine.
Thank you also.
Before we proceed to our second reactor, I so we may I call on Gabby for the sort of feedbacking session for the second video. No, Gabby?
Hello, good afternoon. So we have the same Mentimeter link. We placed it in the chat. And if you have any comments or feedback for the video on cinnamon, you may leave the feedback here. So it's the same link, but this time we'll ask you to leave just a few words in the interest of time. And then we will compile that in a word cloud, which I will share to everyone right now. So hopefully you can see. Is it showing up on your screen? So the biggest word I see is congratulations, MAMACILA. And it is very inspiring, encouraging, and exciting.
Congratulations, MAMACILA.
And there is a
Support
call,
sa atong IP.
yes, to support our IPs. Very
Inspiring
educational. Yeah. So siguro everyone can keep writing their feedback and then we'll come back to it later. Oh, it just changed. So the biggest word is now inspiring and sustainable. Must taste good. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, back to you, Archie, for our next
Okay.
reactor.
Thank you, Gabby. Thank you to our participants who have input their responses. No, the Cinnamon Enterprise, although it's still starting, no, as mentioned by early in the video, they are quite really hopeful that this would help them in their quest for sustainable livelihoods. Okay, so now may call on Mr. Weljan from Senro Initaw to give us his reaction. Mr. Weljan.
Thank you, Sir Archie. Hello, everyone, and my due respect to MAMACILA community. And of course, I'd like to say thank you to NTFP-EP for inviting DNR. I believe this might be the first time us joining such webinar. And this is really very interesting. And just like Ma'am Lorraine, I have not heard any information about wild food back then. So I had to do some research and it is very interesting indeed. So MAMACILA community is not new for me. I've been there a couple of times. I've been in their wonderful protected areas. We have national breeding program there back in 2014. That's 65 hectares planted with indigenous species. And I've been working with Dato Perfecto and Bae Erlinda. They are really wonderful person. And I'm very excited about this cinnamon product. I hope to really visit you there and hopefully taste, because I am a bit picky when it comes to cinnamon. It really needs to taste good with the coffee. So I am positive on this and looking forward for a positive impact towards the IP community, specifically in MAMACILA. Thank you so much. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Weljan. No, I think I can guarantee that MAMACILA's cinnamon bread is really. So padalhan ka na lang namin, sir, ng in your office. We are I think also MAMACILA later, no, maybe because of as what is emphasized in the first video, they are really right now they're actually doing grassroots initiatives on how they can ensure conservation of their indigenous community conserved area, or ICCA, which they traditionally call as Pina. So maybe we can collaborate more with DNR in this initiative with MAMACILA, and how we can further protect or promote or recognize these community conserved areas, their Pina. Thank you again, Sir Weljan. And now, may I call on Ms. Ruby Peralta from the Bukidnon State University, one of our co-organizers in this webinar. Ms. Ruby.
Right. Okay, thank you, Sir Archie. So here's my reaction to the video. So first, I am reminded and amazed of the forest and its connection, its importance to humanity, and especially to this world. And secondly, I am so blessed to work with the indigenous community. So I miss the community work in NTFP before, walking in those forests and learning about different kinds of forest food. And I also feel blessed about that right now I am already in the academe. Okay, so I am challenged to the richness of my experiences in working with the different indigenous communities I am challenged to share these experiences to my students, to the faculty that I am here right now. So to bring the challenge to bring the communities to the school and especially the real situation of the communities. And at the same time, now that I am in the academe, I am also inspired to extend the expertise that we have, especially on the development of products and food processing, and to bring this expertise to the community. And to continue being biased, to utilize the local resources, especially here in Bukidnon, and then develop them for the further develop them for the further improvement of the community-based enterprises. So what we're having right now inspired me that I have a task to do, that I have something to share, and it renews my commitment on, especially on the advocacy of doing that the product dev that we are, the products that we are developing would help the communities not only gain sustainable livelihood, but at the same time preserve the forest for the future generations.
Okay, thank you, Miss Ruby. Actually, Bukso is our partner also in help develop their community-based forest enterprise. Okay. So actually, Bukso is is really active, no? One of our partner in establishing MAMACILA's community-based forest enterprise on Cinnamon. Thank you, Ma'am Ruby, for that inspiring. No, the videos really also me at the personal level also sort of renews my commitment to further work with indigenous communities. So thank you, Ms. Ruby. So once again, we would like to give our gratitude to the three reactors, so Ms. Ruby Peralta, Ms. Lorraine, and Ms. Sir Weljan, for even with your busy schedule, you have given us the time to participate in this webinar. And we hope that our collaboration will not end in this webinar, that our collaboration will continue, for example, with the DTI in marketing, Cinnamon, in DNR, in working for the recognition of the indigenous community conserved areas with MAMACILA, and Bukso in doing their research and extension work. Thank you once again. So now I think, are you okay for a group photo? May I ask everyone to turn on their camera for a group photo? Yeah. Okay, give us your best smile. Okay, Gabi. 1, 2, 3. One more. Okay. Thank you. So you may now turn off again your camera. So I guess there have been questions that we've already recorded some questions, that are being typed in the chat box. So now I think we are heading to the most interesting part. We are now going to our open forum. So thank you very much to our community panelists and reactors. And now we're ready to entertain questions. So with this, let me call again our area coordinator for Mindanao, Genevieve Labadan, to help us moderate our open forum session. Ms. Jen.
Okay, thank you, Archie. For our open forum, our team will be selecting questions from the Q&A button and chat box. We will try to choose a particular question to represent the geographical location and sectoral representation of the audience. And then we will try to pick questions from the students, members of government agencies, and civil societies, and even the academe. So have you typed your question for the open forum? We encourage the students from the audience, both local and international, to participate in the open forum by typing your questions in the chat box. So I think we already have a question here selected by our facilitators. First is a question directed to Dato Mantundaan, Perfecto Pinuhan. It says here, what challenges do you encounter in conserving forest? Do you have bad people illegally cutting down ancestral trees, quarry, mining? So, para kay Dato Mantundaan, mauni ang pangutana Dato, unsa daw kuno ang mga hagit nga inyong giatubang sa pagkonserba sa inyong kalasangan? Naaba kuno'y mga daotan nga mga tao nga illegal gapamutol og kahoy sulod sa inyong yutang kabilin? Naaba daw kuno'y gakwari, naaba kuno'y gamina? Dato, mauto ang pangutana Dato.
Sige, maayong hapon. Kung mangutana mo nga na, ang pagpamutol gid sa kahoy di sa amo, dili gid mawala, labi na kay na imo ng highway karon 955 ang among sektor. Pero ang kining mining, murag wala pa diha mining sa amo.
Unsa basi na kay ikadugang Dato sa mga hagit like katong mga daghan bitaw nga kamulo development diha sa along Highway 955?
Kanang tuod kanang uban sa diha bag-o na nga nagdevelop og mga kining mga naamay mga diha, mga turismo diha nga ilang i-develop. Muna among problema diha kay wala naman ang hidya mo ang ubandana. Pero kaning gapamutol sa kahoy, unta na ning kamot na midani nga kining mapakgang kini kay busa mangani na among bantay kalasan nga among ipasuroy kanunay di aron dili ni mapadayon. Galing lang kay ang subo nga palandungon diha kay ang hinguog murag lisod mi katabangan sa hinguog nga ang among bantay kalasan dapit sa hinguog adunay allowance unta gamay. Dinhi sa Claveria mapasalamatong ko sa among mayor dinhi nga murag na iyang masinabuton kasing-kasing ba sa mga tribo. Kay ang tinuod kami ang tribo ang among panlantaw para ra unta sa amo dinhi sa bukid, pero sukad ko maglakaw magtuyok-tuyok dinhi sa atong dapit Pilipinas, murag nakabalo ko nga di ay kami ang nagamping dinhi sa lasag sa kinaiyahan, pero ang kadaghanan katawhan naniya sa Mindanao murag nakatabang sad mi sa pagproteksyon kanila. Kay wala man namo upaw ang among lasang. Busa ang ako lang untang panghinaot nga adunay ahinsya sa gobyerno nga makadugang og tabang nga makuan mi kanang matabangan ang among bantay kalasan nga mapadayon sila og makanunayon ang tudsangtod kay nagbantay kalasan sila pero walay klaro nga sweldo kuan ra gyud tinuod ra gyud nga pagproteksyon ang ila sa lasang kinasing-kasing gyud sila. Basta mo niya ang panantaunta nga hinaot nga gikan daning meeting mo ni meeting nga makatabang sa among mapadayon matabangan mi pagproteksyon sa among kalasangan. Kay dili malimod nga importante kaayo kini kanamo ug sa tanan katawhan ka murag importante kini ang lasang. Ora siguro ako.
Okay, Dato Mantundaan, in answer to the question, Dato ako lang sang i-translate ang imong gitubag sa pangutana ngadto sa mga audience. So in answer to the question, Dato Mantundaan said that illegal cutting of trees will always be present, especially that the Highway 955 has just been constructed. So there will always be illegal cutting of trees. And then, but there is no mining. But there is also the problem of tourism. There's a lot of mushrooming buildings, construction of buildings, resorts, among others. No, without FPIC or free and prior no free and prior informed consent or FPIC. And then to prevent this challenge, MAMACILA has been having this what they call as bantay kalasan to monitor their forest and to prevent illegal activities such as illegal cutting of trees and the land grabbing without FPIC. And they are especially thankful. MAMACILA is grateful to LGU Claveria for having been very supportive to their bantay kalasan, giving a small amount as honorarium to the bantay kalasan or the forest guards. And then he also mentioned that MAMACILA, he thinks MAMACILA has an important role in protecting the forest for all the Mindanao people, and that they need support in their effort to continually preserve the forest. So he was also expressing his hope that he is hoping that LGU Hingoog in the side of Hingoog City, that they will also be supportive as LGU Claveria in providing remuneration to the forest guards. So that's it for the answer of Dato Perfecto Pinuhan. For our next question, I think we have a question for Bai Gina Javier. Is Bai Gina still there? So this is the question for Bai Gina Javier.
Kanila. Ma'am.
Oo. The question is, do you have specific rules or protocols when it comes to foraging for wild foods? Are these still being followed or applied in your community? Can you give some examples? So, Bai, mauni ang pangutana. Naa ba daw kunoy pamalaod sa panguha og mga pagkaon nga naa sa sulod sa kalasangan? Naa ba kunoy pamalaod sa pagpanguha niini? Padayon ba daw kuno ni gatumanon or gasundon sa taga-community sama sa inyo mga taga-MAMACILA? Dayon maghatag daw kuno mo example gaon sa unsa ni nga pamalaod ug unsa ni nga mga pamaagi nga aron pagsiguro nga ang inyong mga pagkaon sulod sa kalasangan maprotektahan pero maka-harvest gyapon mo, no? So, Bai?
Okay, maghapon, ma'am. So ang pamalaod lang na, ma'am, sukad pa kaniya to hangtod karon naagod gihapon. Dili gyud na mawala. Nga pamalaod nga pagpanguha diya sa pagkaon diya sa among sulod sa among kalasangan. Sama sa anang kanang labo nga kanang dili man na diretso kanon. Kinahanglan pa gina siya i-proseso o kay kung dili na mahibal-an kung patakaan ra nagkaon mauna mahilo. So mauna nga pinaka-importante kaayo nga kapag pagasundon unsay mga patakaran, unsay pamalaod danha o uban pa sad nga mga pagkaon dinha nga amo ang gitagaan pod o kanang gibug-aton nga para sa mga sumusunod nga ilang mga hibalan nga mga pagkaon.
Bai Gina, Bai Gina.
Ma'am.
Oo, murag wala kay ko nimo nasabtan, murag pamalaod sa pag-harvest nga dili bitaw mapasipad-an ang kalasangan. Basin kuno na ay example nga inyong pwede ika-paambit sa atong mga tigpaminaw karon.
Oh, naa ma'am. Kuan tuod ma'am sa kanang pag-harvest namo sa sama ng pag-harvest sa cinnamon nga dili na basta-basta kuhaon, kinahanglan na asa nay pag-sundon nga kanang ingana nga kadagkoon, ingana ang pagkuha kay aron dili mawala, magpabili na siya nga buhi o kana maprotektahan gihapon nga kanang masubay siya sa pagkuha ni ana nga kuha sa yang mga panit para sa mga tambal para sa cinnamon nga ay naay pamaagi nga usaon pagkuha mo nang ginapasabot kung unsa pagkuha aron dili mga wala.
So, pwede ka maghatag og detalye by Gina kung gaunsaon ni pag-harvest nga maprotektahan ang atong kalingag nga kahoy gikan sa pagkadaot.
Para ma'am kung magkuha na sa kanang kahoy kinahanglan dako siya nga kahoy. Nya kanang ang iyahang pagkuha sa panit kinahanglan nga dili mo lubong dito sa iyahag yung kuan dito sa kuan ganyan nga kahoy kana ra gud iyang panit diri sa ibabaw i-square pagkuha ana unya kanang pag kuan dili gyud na siya hurot-hotdon kinahanglan na salang-salang do na naay kuan kanang sukod niya ma'am nga ingana kabagaon nga panit nga pagkuha unya dili sa napalibutan kinahanglan gyud na nga sa ngalan kanang salang-salang o kana ma'am dili gyud na i-stretch siya kay aron dili madaot ang kahoy.
Thank you, Bai Gina. To translate what she said, they don't just harvest the cinnamon. An example is the harvesting of cinnamon. No, they don't just harvest the cinnamon bark. Carelessly. They should harvest from a mature tree and not from a young cinnamon tree. And that when harvesting, there is a certain thickness that they follow, that it will not damage the inner tissue of the tree, the cinnamon tree. And that when harvesting, it should be, she was saying that it should be in an alternating method. The harvesting of the bark should not go around in full circle in a particular tree, or else the tree will die. So that's one of the protocols, the harvesting protocol in harvesting the cinnamon bark. For the next question, we have another question here. For DTI, we have a question for our reactor from DTI. How can DTI help in expanding the market for cinnamon? Ma'am Lorraine Brillantes, this question is for you, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Right now, I understand that cinnamon is used for their flavoring sa ilahang bread, sa ilahang bread. I was also thinking na apart from doing that, because usual naman ang kanang bakery sa ato, usually basta bakery, it's really local market kung katong mga nearby communities jud ang ato ang mga customers anang bakery. But I was thinking na para ma-expand pa jud nato further ang market, maybe you would like to consider, apart from using your cinnamon powder sa inyong baked products, pwede man na siya actually nga ma-package ang inyong cinnamon powder na mabaligya nato para sa kanang mga restaurant tours, kanang mga owners sa restaurants o mga food manufacturers nga gakinahanglan pud og cinnamon flavoring. So one of the options na nga pwede pud nato siya i-pursue. So cinnamon powder as is na siya na ibaligya, and we can brand it as a wild food kay pag wild food siya naaman good na siya premium considering mas nutritious siya, na I believe nga mas nutritious siya, walay preservatives, all natural, walay any additives, clean food, free from all radicals and all mga unsa pa ng mga naasa ka ng mga artificial food or kanang mga cultured food nga mo usual na to ang ginakaon, no? So aside from that, pwede po nato siya i-brand as a medicinal value, o pwede po nato siya himuan og kanang background story because ang market nato karon ganahan sila og kanang mga meaningful stories behind a product. So mo na siya mga possible nato nga hunahunahon kung unsaon pa nato nga mapalambo pa jud or mapa-promote pa jud nato niya nga to ang cinnamon nga product. But of course important jud nga dapat atong tarungon ang iyahang packaging before we do further marketing. So kana siguro pwede mi makahatag og tanang technical assistance kung unsaon nato siya pag-pack, unsaon nato maka-come up tag good branding para sa ato ang cinnamon product. So daghan pa tag pwede mahimo pa jud nga pwede nato mahatag or matambag pa sa inyo ha, but for now maybe kana lang sa. And gusto sad nako pwede ba nako ma-address na lang pud na ako'y nakita nga question diri, nangutana diri nga pwede ba nato i-patent ang cinnamon products in favor of the indigenous communities. So
Excuse me, ma'am. Basin ganahan ka nga magdiretso na English para sa atong international audience?
Okay. Okay, sorry. Yes,
On
there's
the
a question.
Oo.
Yeah, there's a question here. How can cinnamon products be patented in favor of the indigenous communities since partners like DTI showed interest in the development of these as food products? Patent as an intellectual property usually made for invention. So these are answers to answers or solutions to a certain problem. So muna siya, that's the qualification for a certain product to be patentable. So if the product addresses a certain problem or commercial siya and commercially viable siya, and also novel, so nobody have ever done it before. So because of this, ang ako ang tanaw aning what I can say about patenting the cinnamon product is maybe the cinnamon product will not qualify under the patent sa intellectual property. But what I would suggest is to pursue applying for a trademark also under the intellectual property. So if we have a brand, we can apply actually for a trademark for the indigenous community group, so that mas well known, so that their product will be packaged properly and it will have a good brand and it can be marketed properly. So I
Okay.
think that's it for now.
So, in answer to the first question to DTI, how can DTI help in expanding the market for cinnamon? Ma'am Lorraine said that cinnamon is commonly used in bakeries, and to expand the market, maybe it's good to package also cinnamon powder and package the powder from cinnamon for food manufacturers and restaurants, no, as is. And then DTI can assist in improving the packaging and also in coming up with a good branding. She said DTI can assist in that. And then she also mentioned that cinnamon from MAMACILA can be a premium product because it can be branded as a food that is that has no additives. It is free from radicals. It is clean food, not cultured. And it can also be branded as having medicinal value. And she also made mention that the market now is interested in products that has meaningful stories behind it. So that's all about the question to DTI. And for the last two questions, we have here a question for Enrique and MJ or Michelle Jean, our two youth representatives and panelists from MAMACILA. Enrique and Michelle Jean, napa ba mo diha?
Yes, ma'am.
Sige, mao ni ang pangutana in English. What current practices or intervention does the communities do to make sure that the youth and the future generation keep sustainable cultural and environmental practices, especially that modernization is also speeding up? So sabi ni Saya, ang pangutana, unsa daw kuno ang inyong gabuhaton aron siguradoon nga ang mga kabatan-unan nga sama sa inyo ug ang sumusunod pa nga henerasyon, inyong mga manghod, inyo gyung maampingan ang mga kulturanhon, tradisyonal ug mga kinaiyanhon nga mga pamaagi, labi na karon kuno nga naa na may grabe na ang modernisasyon. So unsa daw inyong buhaton aron magpabilin ang inyong kahibalo sa inyong kultura ug sa inyong pagpabilin sa inyong kinaiyahan? Nakuha MJ and Enrique? Osbon nako? Okay na to?
Okay na, ma'am.
Sige daw,
Okay na,
tubagon
ma'am.
daw na to. Sige.
Kuan kayo sa amo karon mga youth is dako kay challenge sa mga gyud, especially sa
Enrique,
katong
time sa
yes ma'am.
Enrique. Basin ganahan ka nga diretso na mag-English. Sige, okay ra.
Ay na lang ma'am.
Sige, sige.
Bisaya na lang ko ma'am.
Oo, sige.
Kuan kay ma'am, challenge kay sa among youth karon kay especially sama sa mga gingon ma'am, kuan na kayo na expose na kayo especially in social media. Daghan na kayo mga kuan, so malimtan na ang kanang mga bahin sa mga pangkultura. So challenge kay sa mga galisod mig invite pod sa among mga kuan, pero always na mo gina-invite para mo appeal sila para mo uban sila sa ilaha as part sa pagprotekta sa kalasangan ug pagpadayon sa kultura, pagprotekta sa uban pa nga mga gikinahanglan nga protektahan para mapadayon og mukuan sa sunod nga mga henerasyon. So bahin sa imong ingon ma'am nga unsa yung pamaagi, actually challenge kayo gid sa amo gyud kami sad gani gina-challenge pud namo among kaugalingon nga active me, always me active ani nga part usahay magluya something ingana. Pero gina-challenge pud namo among kaugalingon pud as well as among mga igsoon, pamilya kay lisod gid kayo i-kuan sila i-invite pero hinahinay lang sa hinahinay, pasabot sila sa hinahinay aron masabtan nila kung unsa day ka importante ang pagprotekta sa ato sa amo ancestral domain. So ana lang ako pass to MJ.
MJ?
Yes, ma'am. Unsa ito ka ma'am katong unsa nga pamaagi namo mapadayon?
Oo, labi na taliwala nga grabe na ang modernisasyon karon. Unsaon ninyo pagpadayon ang mga kahibalo sa pag-amping sa lasang, no? Kamo nga mga kabatan-unan. Ug labi na sad sa inyong kultura pagpadayon og amping, pagpadayon og buhat sa inyong kultura, sa inyong tradisyon.
Ay, okay, ma'am.
Labi na nga grabe
para
ang...
sa
Oo. Sige.
Sa labi na grabe
ang modernisasyon,
ma'am,
like katong gihisgutan ni Enrique nga social media
Enrique.
exposure. Oo.
Yes, ma'am. Bitaw ma'am, sa karon gid kanang makita gid nata kung unsa nang layo na medyo gyud ang uban nga kanaang youth nga namo nga mga higaunon sa amo ang kultura noon kay murag gina-focus na nila ang side sa kanaang side sa dili og kuan. So sa ako lang ma'am kung sa unsaon na mo pagpamaagi siguro kung willing lagid siguro mi nga youth or willing gid ang among uban nga elders nga magpadayon og pagtudlo sa moa o paghatag sa mo og kanang makaalam kung saon namo sa puhon nga kanang maampingan pa ang amo ang lasang kanang mas maayo siguro nga kanang sa karon sayo pa og naa pa sila inailan ang ginahatag or ginahatagan na nila og kanaang kaalam about kung unsa amo ang buhaton unsay dapat namo nga kanaang mahimo nga kanaang puhon ila naming kanang murag ila mi kanaang giyahan ba sa puhon nga kanaang maparihami sa ilaha kay tinuod man sa karon grabe gid lisod kayo tungod sa mga kanaang mga hagit nga nag-abot na sa amo ang kanaang organisasyon or sa amo ang mga higaunon tungod sa mga langyaw nga naggiabot na sa amo ang kuan pero kanaang kuan kung magkahiusa siguro mi nga ang amo ang youth o amo ang mga elders ko magkahiusa siguro dili ra gid siguro sa lisod nga kanaang mapabilin pa ang amo ang kultura og tradisyon og ang amo ang pag-amping sa amo ang kalasangan. Siguro kana lang ma'am.
Okay, thank you MJ and Enrique. To summarize what Enrique has said, he acknowledged that the youth is really facing a challenge, especially so that the youth are really exposed to social media and they tend to shun the tradition and the culture of the Higaunon because of this same exposure. No, and Enrique said that they always invite the other young people within MAMACILA, and even Enrique himself feels discouraged sometimes, and he also said that sometimes the youth of MAMACILA becomes weak in this advocacy of protecting the ancestral domain. And I would like to connect that to what MJ has said, that it is important that the elders, just like Dato Mantundaan, should continue to guide the youth, should continue to teach the youth of their tradition and culture, especially so that there is really the influence of the mainstream is really real. So that's the answer of Enrique and MJ. And for our last question, directed to DENR, Mr. Weljan Kagalawan. Mr. Weljan, are you still there?
Yes.
So this is the question for you, Mr. Weljan. How can the DNR help us for the registration of our Indigenous Community Conserved Areas or ICCA?
Okay, thank you.
Sir Weljan, are you familiar with the Indigenous Community Conserved Areas?
As to the location only, but with regard to the policies, rules, and regulation, I might need to park that question, and whoever asked that question, I will give you my contact details. I'll bring this to our office and get back to you as soon as I have the answers.
Okay. So the facilitators just signaled that that should be the last question. I am giving back the virtual floor to Archie for the remaining parts of this webinar. Archie?
Hello. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Jen, for facilitating the open forum. So there are really a lot of questions, and in the interest of time, we can answer those questions right now. But if you really are interested, you can message our Facebook page to further clarify those questions. Okay, so thank you everyone for participating in our webinar. So we actually are in an overtime. Before we formally close, may we call on Ms. Ruth Picanlas, NTFP-EP Philippines Executive Director, to give us a closing remark.
Maraming salamat, Archie. Thank you, everyone. Madagway mahapon, maayong hapon, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I was watching a favorite TV series last night, and in one of the scenes, an actor paraphrased a line from the opening line of the Charles Dickens novel, A Tale of Two Cities. I think a lot of you know that. The actor said, "It is the best of times, it is the worst of times." Somehow it resonated what I think of our situation now and our participation in this year's Terra Madre. It is the worst of times. I think that most of us would agree that it is certainly one of the worst times, if not the worst in recent history, especially here in our country. COVID-19 is on the rise once again. The threats and killings to indigenous peoples and other environmental defenders continue, including with women. Ancestral domains are continuously being threatened by infrastructure projects and business interests. But it is also the best of times. Through the digital technology, NTFP-EP Philippines and its partner communities were able to participate in this year's Terra Madre through a four-part series of webinars. I would think that this would not have happened if not for the current situation. Despite the lockdowns and for some being stuck in our homes, we are able to hear from our partner indigenous peoples from Sierra Madre, Palawan, Negros Occidental, and Misamis Oriental stories of their food, culture, and lands. See a glimpse of their lasang, their forests and rivers, and feel their call to continue to protect and conserve their lands, their Pina and Baho-Baho, and continue their culture and pass it on to the next generations. In the midst of the pandemic, we are able to hear stories of resilience coming from the indigenous peoples, how the Ate and Bukidnon communities coped with COVID-19 and addressed food security. Despite the COVID-19 restrictions, they continue to practice ranso, their most important cultural heritage, and address food security. They continue to practice pangalap, which includes gathering medicinal plants and other resources for consumption and livelihood. Their practice may not be acceptable to modern medicine, but for them, it is a way of coping with the pandemic on a spiritual level and at the same time through the use of medicinal plants. In the webinar, Water, Biodiversity, and Food for All, you are able to hear from the indigenous communities how they ensure water security through their customary practices in water management. The Higaunon, Dumagat, and the Palawan agree that there is need for healthy and vibrant forests as they are the source of clean water that flows through the rivers and for some serve as tributaries to river basins. We heard the cries of the Dumagat to protect the rivers that are being threatened by the construction of big dams, including the Kaliwa Dam. We saw in the Wild Foods Festival in Brooks Point, Palawan, how the Palawan keep their tradition by ensuring the participation of the IP youth. Their traditional food, lutlot and melmel, are not just food for their bodies, but also food for the soul, as it is a way of thanking the Lord of having been spared from the pandemic and other disasters. In today's webinar, we heard from the Higaunon of MAMACILA how important their ancestral lands are, their headwaters, traditional sources of medicine and food, and homes of all forms of life, their places of worship and sacred grounds called Pina. Also now important the practice of panlaoy for them as the youths are able to realize the value of their ancestral land and culture. But their lands are continually being threatened and they are now working on having their ICCA registered. We see the importance of wild foods for them. We have also seen how the Higaunon use their natural resource, especially kalingag or cinnamon, establishing a sustainable livelihood. And I think we can really make it the best of times if we are able to heed the call of our partner Indigenous peoples. As others have said, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for us to shift the current development paradigm of extractives, massive plantations, tourism, and destructive development projects towards a more sustainable, greener, and more inclusive economy. We need to reaffirm our commitment to sustainable management of the forest, protect and conserve our forests, protect and conserve the cultures and practices of Indigenous people. Thank you for participating in this webinar and the past webinars. Thank you to all our partners, including the Bukidnon State University and of course to Terra, Madre, Salone del Gusto. Thank you to our reactors who share their thoughts and time, and most of all, thank you to the generosity of our partner Indigenous people, especially MAMACILA, Siposno, MKE, BICAM, Kagat, and all our other partners for sharing your food, culture, and lives with us. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, Miss Ruth. So as part of our thank you, we'll be actually giving a certificate to our reactors, to Sir Welljohn, Miss Lorraine, and Ma'am Ruby. We'll be giving a certificate of appreciation for giving us your valuable time in responding to our call, to participate in this webinar. And also for those who have attended in our Zoom, we actually also giving certificates. So you just need to message us at our Facebook or through email if you want to get your certificates. So for announcements, Gabby, do we have announcements? Actually, we have social media accounts. So for more updates, if you want to have updates on our network, you can follow us on our social media accounts on Facebook, through YouTube, and Instagram. So to our accounts, Not by Timber Alone, NTFP-EP Philippines. We also have a newsletter, so you can subscribe to our newsletter to be updated to for our network news and updates from our partner communities. So, Gabby, do we have announcements?
No more announcements, but you can still send us your feedback on the videos and on our webinars through our email or through our private messages on Facebook. Thank you very much.
One last note. Actually, the products of our communities are available at the Custom Made Crafts Center. No.
And Lindungawan.
Cinnamon is not there, but maybe in the when we already established the cinnamon market. But our other community products are available at the Custom Made Crafts Center.
There's also an online shop for CMCC. So it's in our Facebook page.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Beng. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congrats to all of you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Maraming salamat po sa mga taga-MAMACILA.
Thank you.
Maraming salamat sa ulitin. Thank you.
Thank you, Bukso. Thank you, MAMACILA.
Thank you, MAMACILA, Enrique, Gina, Dato Perfecto, and Michelle Jane.
Yeah,
J-Lord.
Thank you sa uulitin. Yes, tapos na.
Live ako.
Nakakatawa naman. Sige, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
God bless. More power.
Susunod pang meeting. Galing, Archie.